So today we're going to be building towards a leveling build that we are going to be using for Decos, for dual blades on the high rank, for leveling on the endgame. Once you enter into the endgame, once you enter into the high rank, what is it that I should start building and crafting before I can actually start fighting the juicy stuff? These weapons, since they are elemental based, they require for you to have like a whole bunch, like a real whole bunch of stuff. These are very Decos hungry builds, so it's very difficult to set them up. But this is just going to be just more than enough for you to have a good, really good base with some really cool skills before you can actually start crafting something a little bit different that is going to help you farm that much faster when you're going to have the antivirus builds for the endgame, the coalescence builds, the frenzy builds, the Go Magala builds, and all of that kind of stuff. This is what we're going to be using for leveling up as a build for the Decos. So we're going to start with the equipment, and for the equipment, the best skills that you are going to want to have for the daggers is going to be burst. So the first monsters that you are going to be fighting before you get into the Ebony of the Garon and before you get into the G-Rathalos and things like that, very good choices is the Conga A. At this point you shouldn't really have to worry that much about Decos. You should start farming your Decos in here, but this is going to give you 1 level into burst. This is also going to give you 1 level into burst, but also the Tadioth is very good. It gives you 1 level into burst, but also the Conga B, this has a level 2 Deco slot so that you can allocate whatever that you would want to allocate in here. This has burst. But once we actually start fighting the other Garon, the pieces that we want to be using, it's going to be the helmet, which is going to give us 2 levels into burst. It's also the beta helmet, 2 levels into burst, and then 1 level 2 slot for Jewel. And then we're going to have the Ebony Coil beta. This is going to give us a level 2 Deco slot, a level 1 Deco slot, and also 1 level into burst. At this point, we already have 3 levels into burst and 3 decoration slots right in here. And while we're leveling up, we are going to be using the other most important DPS damage type of skill, which is going to be the weakness exploit in here. There's a whole bunch of options, but as soon as you're leveling up, the Nersila Male A, it has a little bit of a weakness exploit in here. The Chadacabra Greaves B, the beta, they actually have a weakness exploit in here with a 1 level slot. And then you also have the Bulakakshi, which also has weakness exploit, and you can just craft this just by killing the Bulakshi, using the Bulakshi Caparis that you can find. Those are for the little mobs that you found out in the world. And then the Chadacabra A also has weakness exploit in here, and then you also have weakness exploit in here. But as soon as you start fighting the Rathalos, you're going to want to have the G-Rathalos Male Beta, the G-Rathalos Bambraces Beta, and the G-Rathalos Grips Beta. This is going to give us a whole bunch of decoration slots, but it's also going to give us 3 levels of weakness exploit. So that's going to be the armor that we're going to be striving for, and this is what is going to carry us throughout the entirety of the stuff. Then this is what we can start using to fight the Archvales, the Go Magala, the Ray Dawus, and the really endgame enemies. So what about the weapons? What is going to be my weapons progression for the dual blades? Like always, you're going to want to have in mind the attack, the affinity that you have available for you, how much of the element that you have in here. One very good important thing about the dual blades, since you're going to be burning through your sharpness, you need to have decent levels of sharpness into your weapons. And also, you have to have in mind the skills that the weapons may or may not have. Like for example, Power Prolonger is very powerful, Focus is very powerful, but for example, let's say Punishing Draw, that's not powerful at all, that's wasted potential. The Critical Draw, we don't want any of them. So most of the weapons are going to have Focus and Power Prolonger. Also, things that have critical elements, it's not that it's bugged right now, it's just that it's not giving us the returns that we would like to have when it comes. There's like better skills that are going to give us much more damage, like the ones that we're using, for example, Burst or Critical Boost. Things like that are always going to give us that much more damage. So you should avoid the critical elements and the critical draws and things like that. As a general rule of thumb, my advice is that as you're leveling up, avoid the critical elements. Do not be confused. For example, the critical status. The critical status is actually kind of nice, although this is one of the ones that only has this thing right here. It only has 1 point and then a critical draw. Critical status is actually pretty good if you build towards critical status with a paralysis kind of thing. You can proc up to 5 times paralysis on a single hunt, so that's very powerful. But as a general rule of thumb, you should be avoiding critical draw and then stick with the focus, because this is going to help us to build our Archdemon mode that much faster. But also Power Prolonger is also going to allow you to remain that Archdemon mode faster, and the dodging while the demon mode that you get while dodging, this is going to extend that even much more. So some very good recommendations that I have for you right in here. The Master Savers, these guys give you up to 200 of water element. They have amazing sharpness. It has decent affinity, and it also has focus. Another one of my favorites that I always like to use, and that it always comes with really good stuff, is the Rattleless Tree, because this guy has already imprinted the critical boost, which, like I said, is something that it is very much in our interest to have. It has a very similar kind of a build-up as the water, so in here you already have water and you already have fire, so that's very good in here. And then finally, as a general rule of thumb, I like the La Lavarina weapons if I'm fighting like something that it's not going to be either weak to fire or water. Then I like to use the La Lavarina weapons, purely because of the paralysis is generally universally good against anything that you're fighting. But also it is good to note and good to have in mind, this is like an honorable mention. This also has critical eye, so it's going to help you with the affinity. Although the affinity in here is crappy, it has a huge, and you're rarely ever going to be sharpening with these weapons, and they have decent amount of attack, but they don't have elements, and ideally with the daggers we want to be using elements. So yeah, that's the thing. So once we have talked about the equipment, the weapons, the gear, the armor that we're going to be using with this build, let's actually talk about the decorations that we're going to be slotting into the character and the amount of stuff that we are going to have in here. You will see that we have Water Attack 3, Focus 3, Critical Eye, Critical Boost, Handicraft Burst, Evade Window, Weakness Exploit, Constitution, a whole bunch of stuff. This is not ideal, like this is not the highest amount of DPS and really meta skills that you can have into your build, but this is just going to breeze through against any fight that you have in front of you, provided that you're fighting something that is weak to the specific elements that you have. And I am going to have a little bit of a recommendation in here, depending on the needs and the stuff that you have at the moment. So for example, you will notice that I have a whole bunch of evasion jewels that I have slotted into my level 2 decoration slots, because evade window for the daggers is just like, it's the code. Like, it's you can just be spamming and evasion and become a god mode. You get more damage because of the perfect dodges that you get, and you get more damage, and you get your character buff to your damage and stuff like that. So it's always in your best interest to have evade window. However, I am very well aware that these are very common. These are very common decos that you're going to find, but I'm very aware that while you're leveling up, you're not going to have that many of them. So feel free, even while this is a level 2 decoration slot, feel free to allocate more physique jewels in here to raise the physique, the constitution, all the way to level 5 instead of the evade window to 3. 3 levels into evade window is just fine, and then 5 levels into physique is just going to be as amazing, because we are going to be dodging like a maniac, and we want to be managing our stamina because of our archdemon mode, because of our demon mode, and all of the new mechanics that the weapon has when it comes to the gameplay of the weapon. So then again, remember, if you don't have enough evasion jewels, then feel free to change these guys right in here. Now, I'm using as an example my my water daggers in here as a weapon that you might or should be using as you're leveling up. But remember that you have several options. You have the Rathalos, you have the water, you have the La Lavarina, and ideally the general rule of thumb is that you're going to want to give it a elemental attack. These are very common. I was lucky enough to get one with handicraft, so that's actually kind of nice. And then you're going to either be using an expert jewel or a razor sharp jewel. You will see in here that we have 5 levels into burst already, and that is because of our talisman. I have the burst talisman, and because of that, I don't actually have that much weakness exploit, but if I were to be using a talisman for weakness exploit, my weakness exploit would go up all the way to 5, and then since I will have kind of enough critical damage, then I could remove 1 critical eye, 1 expert jewel in here to change that for razor sharp. However, have that in mind that that is only going to be true if you feel that you don't have enough sharpness, if you feel that you're struggling with sharpness. That's the time when you should be using something like a razor sharp level 2 to be able to manage that up. A level 2 razor sharp is going to give you a 25% chance of no sharpness loss. However, I would save this until you're on the real endgame, because the change in between 25 to 50%, it's just like huge. So yeah, that's something to very much have in mind in that. But as a general build that you can have, comfort and things like that, this is right in here. You have the stream jewel in here. This is the elemental jewel that you're going to be changing to whichever element you're using at the time. A level 2 expert jewel to increase our affinity a little bit. The critical boost, just 1 level is just more than enough to get that 28% extra boost in damage. And then the evasion, remember that you can change this in between physique, or you can even use divine protection or more healing. This is something that you can change up to your personal preference. This is the ideal build, but it's not necessary. I know that while you're leveling up, you're not gonna have that many decos, so don't worry too much about this. The cool thing about this build also is that our burst is going to last a little bit longer, and it's also going to give us +3 into attack while the burst is active, so that's always going to be nice. But also, not only that, we also have the Scorcher, which is going to be the Rathalos Flare. Whenever you're using fire weapons, your damage is going to be improved that much more, so this build is going to shine even more when you're fighting against enemies that are weak to fire. So as you can see, even while you are leveling up through the high rank, through the endgame, you can still slot very cool stuff. We are going to have a much better version of this build tomorrow, I think. The real endgame version of this build, but this should be enough. As you're about to see right now in a little hunt that I'm going to have for you, this is just going to be more than enough for you to breeze through everything that the game has to throw at you. If you like the content, like it, I super appreciate it. And also, if you're a gorgeous, beautiful person, you are indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person, subscribe to the channel, join the Discord. Have a beautiful day, goodbye.